Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Got a very wiggly table here. It's great to have you out on our Monday night. We've got some great things to talk about, some fun to have, and so we're going to jump right into that. I'm going to pray, and then we'll kind of reveal our topic to you and talk through it. I think it will be entertaining and interesting. I worked real hard to find some videos that demonstrate some of the things that I want to talk about tonight, and I'm going to do my best to make them work on this junky little TV behind me. It may or may not work, so we'll just have to see how that goes. But as long as we keep our internet connection, we'll be in good shape. But I'm thankful you're here. Let's pray together, and then we'll get started. God, thank you for giving us tonight. Thank you for giving us a place where we can come together and develop relationships, to pray together, to study together, and to be challenged together. And so God, I pray that in this evening that you would open our hearts to you, that you'd open our minds to understand you, and stand in awe of you and your creation, and your creativeness, and your design. Ultimately, though, as we look at these things that you have done, I pray that each person here will see you as their own creator and understand that you created each one here with a plan and purpose. There's no accident, but instead we each one were designed and developed, fearfully and wonderfully made, so that we could live for you and love you and return that love that you give us, and love one another and love those who are around us, and that we can show them the hope and the love that is in you. And so we praise you for all of this. In Jesus we pray. Amen. Well, these reveal services have, we've adapted it here and there, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end, kind of as where we go from here with it, because we're going to tweak it again just a little bit. But what these were always designed to do, once we started in on this reveal thing, was to really talk about foundational level ideas that would help people understand who God is better. Not necessarily a Bible study. This is more intended to overcome objections to faith. It's usually a topic we would call apologetics, which has nothing to do with apologizing. It is defense of the faith. It comes from an ancient word, apologia, which is what that really means. But how do you defend the faith? How can you be ready to give a defense for the hope that's in you? There will be times if you live your faith out loud. In other words, if people see that there's something different about you, eventually they're going to ask, what's different about you? We need to have a good answer for what that is. And that's going to be something we're going to actually talk about at Renew on Sundays coming up very soon. About what does it look like to be a witness for God. But how do we answer those questions? If someone were to say, why are you different? What would you say? And then if they found out that, of course, you're a Christian, if they had objections to faith, which many people in our society do, how would you address it? Hopefully you wouldn't just go, well, I've got this pastor guy who can answer all your questions, and that would be fair, and guess what? That actually happens a lot. I spend a fair amount of my time every week answering questions from people that their friends have, and that's okay. But ultimately what would be awesome is to train you how to be a real explorer of your own faith and who God is, so that when people really ask you, well, why do you really believe that God is creator? Or why do you believe that Jesus is who he says he is? You would actually have something to give them. Now, Kirk talked about this yesterday, and not everybody here was there, and that's good, I'm glad you're here. But one of the things he mentioned in kind of prefacing the backstory with us was he said, you don't have to necessarily explain everything the way that I do, the way that Spencer does. And that's true. Unless you have studied science for years, that might be challenging. But there are things along the way that you could pick up, that you could explain, and you don't have to have a biology degree to do it. But it is interesting to look and see the things that God has created, and I think a couple things. One is be in awe of God. Hopefully that takes doubts away if you're having a bad time or a bad season of life, and you can see God is creator and be in awe of him and really know, wow, he's done some amazing things. but then also to have a story to tell, to give someone else part of what that is. And so we started that, last Sunday, kind of in the series we've been talking about, and I thought I would finish part of that story tonight and talk through it. I had mentioned on Sunday that, even the things that I talked about this 2 weeks ago, talking about the bombardier beetle and the complexity of the eye and some of those kinds of things, leaf miner. I could talk for 4 hours just on those things, and everyone here, I'm sure, believes that's true. There's no question I could talk for 4 hours on that topic. Well, the challenge is there were other things I would love to have told everybody, and we just didn't have time in 35 or 40 minutes. So I wanted to kind of finish that part of the story and did give you a little more. Now, there's a ton of things that we could talk about that show God as creator in looking at biology, looking at nature. Now, we could look at any various topics. We could look at astronomy, and we could see God as creator by looking at astronomy. We could look at chemistry and see that God is creator through chemistry. We could look at cell biology and look at just that cell and all the little organelles and all the pumps and all the things that are in the cell membrane, and it would blow your mind. It would give you a headache, but it would blow your mind. But it shows this amazing creator that has designed these things with complexity. You can look at any discipline of science to do it. My favorite, though, is biology, because that's what I've studied the most. And so I thought we would take off with that a little bit more. But there's this idea in science, and you might hear it, and it's called teleology. And what that really means is it's a study and a discipline that shows, from a scientific perspective, that there's purpose and design. And so as we're looking at things, really the case that I'm making is a teleological argument that says that there's purpose and design. It really is the opposite of an evolutionary model that says there's no purpose, there's no design, it's all accident. Because understand, and as we get into some of these topics, understand, it's very important, that the evolutionary model says that all the complexity in life that we see, so that is in you, in your own body, and the complexity. And just think about the organs and the organ systems and how all those things work together in perfect harmony, that everything like that, like even your four-chambered heart, and the atrium and the ventricles with an atrioventricular node and a sinoatrial node, which are little bundles of nerve tissue in the heart that in a sense act like pacemakers. And one will shoot off an electrical impulse and the other one picks it up. And that's what causes that heart to beat like that. And you think, in order for that to have happened that way, or in order for the liver to function as a filter, or in order for your T lymphocytes and the white blood cells and all those things to be just perfect, like these little warriors that go after infection, every one of those complex mechanisms was purely accidental. Random mutations. In other words, as genetic code was photocopied, we used that photocopier example at some point on a Monday night not too long ago. It'd be like crumpling up a piece of paper and photocopying that, and that's the mutation. And that this caused a beneficial effect. And every part of you is from a random, accidental, non-directional mutation. That's what you are the end result of. And then all the complexity of life is the same. And so everything, that is water molecules, everything is random. It was accidental. There was no purpose, no design to a hydrogen bond, or to your brain, or to the mountains, or any of that. It's just random. It happened with no planning, no purpose. And so that's one side of the story. And the other side of the story is everything we see was purposeful. That God literally knit you together and made you with a purpose and a plan. And so those are really our two options. There really is no third way. And so what will we believe? Now, again, the evolutionary model wants you to believe that you're an accident because the idea of answering to a creator is too much for some of the scientists, many of them. And in fact, if you go back and you look at their quotes, it's very interesting to see what some of them say. And I've told you the quote I did a couple weeks ago on George Wald, and how he said, we've disproven spontaneous generation, which is the inorganic molecules becoming organic, becoming living things. We disproved it 100 years ago. But that only leads us to only one other conclusion, that God created it. And we can't believe that philosophically, so we're going to believe impossible stuff. But you look through the scientists and all of the quotes about this topic, when you can nail them down, they'll say things like, we refuse to believe in a creator because it goes against our sexual mores. you'll see quotes like that from them. They just say, we just refuse to believe that there's a God because he just doesn't fit what we want in our life. And so their impossibilities take a lot more faith than to believe that there's a God who created. And so again, part of what we're trying to do then is help you make this teleological argument that says, no, when you look at the world around you, you see purpose and plan and design in everything. And so there's a scripture for that, Psalm 104:24. It says, O Lord, how manifold are thy works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your riches. And absolutely, when you look at the world around us, we see an ingenious plan, an ingenious creation that has complexity beyond complexity. And in fact, some of the complexity, and if we have time, we'll look at a couple of these videos, some of the complexity, in fact, is such that scientists try to recreate what they see in nature in creating mechanical mechanisms that would work because they're so perfect in their design that they want to try and recreate it with science. And of course, it's impossible, but they continue to try. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. So some of the things that we've talked about, and if we have time at the end, then we'll go back. But some of the things we've talked about recently have been the eye, the sea slug. I found a video on YouTube. I went out and just looked up the sea slug and the sea anemone to see if I could find a video of the sea slug eating the sea anemone. It doesn't actually have a video of it, but it's explaining how that works. And if you remember, the sea slug eats the sea anemone. It doesn't set off the poison barbs. Instead, it digests them, moves them through these little tubes in its stomach and out to the ends of its own little outward prominences. And so now if you try and attack sea slug, it uses the defense mechanism of the sea anemone that it ate to defend itself. And you look at that complexity and go, do we really believe that was an accident? A random mutational fact. So I found a video that talks about, I have it here, we talked about bombardier beetles. I found a video on that one too, where it shows him in slow motion shooting his hot juices at an ant and a leaf miner. So, but there's other ones. So one of the ones I want to show you, stop it, is a gardening ant. And so now that may not sound fancy to you, and that's okay. But a gardening ant is a very interesting creature. And I'm going to pull this video up. I'm going to try to anyway. And we'll see how this works. And yeah, that's awesome. I want to show you this little 2-minute video. And then, oh, it's going to show an advertisement. It's a political ad, no less. So I'll use it. Just ignore him. Just ignore that. I'm not being political for anything watching in the future. It's just part of the YouTube video. Ignore it. Ignore it. I'm not making political statements.
So you can skip this ad.
Okay, here we go. So this is a gardening ant.
Whenever a huge tree falls in the Costa Rican rainforest, a gap of sunlight is formed in the canopy. New life competes for this light, like this vine racing this sapling upward. But there's one tree that never has any competition, thanks to an incredible symbiotic relationship it shares with an ant. The swollen thorn acacia and its namesake, the acacia ant, have developed harmonious roles in each other's lives. The ant's role is as protector. If any of those vines try to steal the acacia's light, the ant security guards go to work. A few good chops on the vine stems, and it's lights out for the vine. The ants don't stop there. This relatively huge grasshopper may think it's going to take a few bites out of the non-poisonous acacia, but the ants take a few bites out of it instead. And they throw in a few stings for good measure. In exchange for all this protection, the tree takes on the provider role. It gives the insect everything it needs in terms of food and shelter. These little nodules, or nectaries,
And I just want you to listen to the way that the National Geographic paints that. It's as if the plant said, thank you for helping me, now I'm going to give you these things. Anyway.
Secrete a sweet nectar for the adult ants to eat. And these brownish pods at the end of some leaves are the perfect, nutrient-packed food for the ants developing young, called larvae. The acacia ant larvae live down hollowed-out thorns at the base of the acacia leaves. Some will eventually grow into adults with wings and will fly off to replicate this evolutionary masterpiece in a new acacia.
I love the music at the end. The miracle of evolution. This is the best they can come up with. So the idea is, okay, so we have this tree, and you have these incredibly poisonous and incredibly angry ants. And the ants live on the tree. And the tree produces these little sugary nodules called Welschen bodies. And the ants eat these things. It gives them energy and all that. And then they live inside the hollow thorns of the tree itself. Now, from a scientific perspective, what they would say is this is a symbiotic relationship. And they talked about that a little bit, that the tree benefits from it because it has protection, and the ants benefit from it because they have food. And what the claim that they're trying to make is that they evolved into this relationship. That over time, the tree and the ants evolved together in some sort of a symbiotic relationship as if they evolved hand in hand. And so the question is that realistic? Do we see that when we look at it from a natural perspective? And so the answer is no. This is a symbiotic relationship. That's absolutely true. But the burden of proof is on the evolutionists to come up to say, is this how they evolved, like they co-adapted over time? And that they evolved simultaneously in this kind of relationship. So here's what's interesting. So if that were true, you would need the tree that is growing a certain way, and the ants are growing a certain way, and they're all growing together in perfect harmony. But in reality, what happens is if that ant, and it is an amazing situation. The ant, for instance, and they kind of talked a little bit about it, in a rainforest, there's lots of competition of plants for sunlight. And so often what happens is the plants are skinny and they grow really fast because they're all trying to basically try and get the sunlight in the canopy, which is hard to do. And so they're densely packed, nice and thin, but not this one. What happens is when a little green shoot begins to develop anywhere near this acacia tree, those ants will actually go and chop down the little green shoots on the ground. So the acacia tree has absolutely no competition whatsoever for the sunlight. It's one of the only trees that has no competition whatsoever. And it's not chemical competition, like walnut trees, for instance. Have you ever, anyone played with the husk of a walnut? A real walnut that's fallen off a tree. What happens to your skin? It turns yellow. That's because of a chemical called juglone. And juglone is a chemical that's inside there. I know I'm a nerd, sorry. But juglone, I hadn't planned to talk about walnuts. But juglone is a chemical that is incredibly sour and organisms will not eat them. So an animal won't come up and peel that softer layer off to get to the walnut because the chemical is just too disgusting. They don't want to have anything to do with the juglone. But what's interesting about the juglone is it is so intense of a chemical, no other plants can grow around it. So you won't see other plants growing up at the base of a walnut tree, right? It's just because the chemical is too intense. This one's not a chemical component. This is the ants go and attack anything that grows around it so that there's no competition for the tree. And so the question is this an evolutionary mechanism or is this something that God designed on purpose with this perfect plan in mind? And so we have to decide in those kinds of questions. But the burden of proof is still on the evolutionists to try and tell us that these things co-evolved and co-adapted. The question is, in an evolutionary model, does that happen? Do things co-evolve that way, based on what you know about what an evolutionary model is? The answer is no, because things don't evolve over time directionally. They only evolve mutationally or randomly. So you wouldn't have these evolving that way. They have to have a totally separate situation. But the ants are an amazing creature, and they go and they do all this work. And there's absolutely benefit. Here's what's probably the most amazing thing though, and that is if you kill the ant colony that's on the tree, and we've proven this with research, those acacia trees will die in 2 to 15 months. So they're absolutely dependent on these ants. So again, if it were an evolutionary mechanism, if the ants aren't completely doing their job right, the trees would never have survived. Does that make sense? And so you don't evolve all of a sudden. Even in their evolutionary model, it would be slow over time progressiveness. But the trees would all die in 2 to 15 months if the ants weren't doing perfectly their job. And it just goes to show design and purpose in what God's doing here. Okay, so let's do another one. So that's the gardener ant. And there probably will be another political commercial. So this is
My name's Ashley Pledger, and I'm in Arkansas.
blah 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 blah. 'Tis the season. 'Tis the season for coldlets. Blah 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 blah. That's good, huh? I just came up with that. Anyway, so what I want to talk about is the cleaning station. So what you're going to find is another symbiotic relationship where two organisms are working hand in hand or side by side to accomplish one thing. But the question is, could this have been an evolved characteristic or something that happened because God created it? Very dramatic music for a science show. Yeah, come on. Hawaiian showers. That sounds exciting.
One of the most fascinating behaviors happening on reef systems all across the tropical world is the cleaning station. Here in Hawaii, there are multiple animals that make their living as cleaners. However, the two main obligatory cleaners in Hawaii are the Hawaiian cleaner wrasse, Labroides thyrophagus, and the scarlet cleaner shrimp, Lismata amboinensis. A cleaner's job in life is to pick all the dead skin cells, bacteria, and parasites off all the other fish. They get their food that way, while all the other fish get a shower. At night, many reef fish go down deep in the cracks and crevices of the coral for safety. While they're sleeping, tiny little ectoparasites living amongst the coral heads come out and crawl all over the reef fish. The parasites will commonly lodge themselves near the fish's fins and their gill slits. When the fish wake up in the morning, they don't have fingers to just go easily pluck off the parasites. So what do? They show up at a cleaning station and the cleaners eat them all. Cleaner wrasse will do a special dance to attract fish to their cleaning station.
Come get your
While
car
cleaner
washed.
shrimp advertise their services
I like the shrimp.
by waving their long antennae at all passing fish. Virtually all inhabitants of the reef get cleaned at some point during the day. In exchange, cleaners seem to enjoy almost total immunity from predation. It's almost as if they're protected by the mom down there.
And this is
Watch
great.
the trust that goes on in this relationship.
It tickles.
Even the predatory fish need to be cleaned.
Okay, this could totally go on, but we'll stop it there. So, now, this is an amazing thing. So, you saw that picture there. So, you have predators, they have teeth, They eat fish, they eat shrimp, they eat these things under normal circumstances. And most people would say, well, fish aren't necessarily smart enough to go, well, I'm just here to, we've got a truce for now. That's not how animals work. Animals are there to basically do a couple of things. They exist to mate and to eat. That's pretty much all that they really do. And so this is part of their instinctual nature. And so to think about this predator with teeth allowing a shrimp, because they went to a certain place in the reef, the shrimp is able to crawl into its mouth and clean out the parasites and things that are inside this predator, and it doesn't chomp down on it. You would think that it would be easy enough just for the thing to chomp down on it and it has a quick meal, right? I mean, from an evolutionary model perspective, the concept of natural selection and all those things, survival of the fittest would say, if you get a chance to eat, you eat. This is how organisms work in the natural world. Organisms don't pass up a meal if they get an opportunity to eat. This is why if you leave a couple pounds of hamburger out on the counter and your dog has had its full meal that day, he's still going to eat those 2 pounds of raw hamburger because they're stupid and all they do is eat. They want to eat. If they get an opportunity to eat, they're going to eat. And so this kind of scenario proves a creator. It just does. It proves that there's creation and plan and design in that mechanism. Because again, from a natural selective model or from survival of the fittest model, they should just chomp down and have a little meal, but they don't. And in fact, it was built into them to know that there is a purposefulness in the symbiotic relationship for them to go to a certain location where it is kind of a white flag. It is a truce, and they can go. And all sorts of organisms do this. And by the way, these aren't the only ones. These were the ones where the pictures were most interesting. But you see other organisms in nature doing it. For instance, there's an Egyptian plover bird that will go and do this for crocodiles. And so the Nile crocodile will open its mouth nice and wide, and a bird will fly into its mouth and clean out its mouth. Again, you would not think that is a normal thing. And it's not a normal thing. If it were an evolutionary model where it's a totally unguided process, this wouldn't happen. But these things are this way because we see design in it. God designed it this way for a reason. Again, it continues to show there's purposefulness and design in all these things. Now, another one that I don't have a video for, though, is the water beetle. A water beetle is kind of interesting. If you remember the bombardier beetle, and okay, let's just go ahead and quickly show part of that bombardier beetle video because I think you'll enjoy it. We've talked about the bombardier beetle, but this is basically bug warfare that we see going on. And so the bombardier beetle, which is always everybody's favorite when we talk about design and nature. And I bet there's another political ad. What do you think? Is it going to happen? Maybe not.
Exploration Films. Check us out on the web at explorationfilms.com.
So in the fall of 1971, I went to Baylor
This is
in
a great
Dallas
story.
and gave my first lecture. It was on the evolution of the tooth. And I talked about how these fish scales gradually migrated into the mouth and became teeth. And a couple of my students came to me after class that day and said, Dr. Martin, have you ever investigated the claims of creation science? Well, that was 1971. I'd never even heard of it. And so I'm thinking to myself, where are these guys coming from? I've never heard of this. And so I said, sure, I'll look into this with you. And I'm thinking kind of as a cocky young professor, I'll blow these guys away. Well, they asked me to start studying the assumptions that the evolutionists made. And in all my years, 8 years of scientific education, I have never had a single professor tell me about an assumption. And so we started looking at the assumptions. And I began to realize they're making some claims here that really the assumptions aren't valid. And then they asked me to start studying some animals and see if I thought that animal could evolve. Well, the first thing that we really studied together was this little bug called a bombardier beetle. And this little insect, it's about a ½ inch long, and it mixes chemicals that explode. So I began to think, okay, now how would that evolve? Let's say if evolution is true, and you're evolving along here, and you don't have a defense mechanism, because that is the defense mechanism of the bug. So if evolution is true, it had to somehow evolve that. So let's say it's coming along here. Well, the first time it evolves the explosion, what does it do to the bug? Boom, it just splattered your bug, okay? So splattered bug pieces don't evolve. So I thought, how could this have happened? Well, it doesn't blow itself up. it has another little factory inside itself that manufactures chemicals. A chemical acts as a catalyst so that when you squirt that chemical in with these other chemicals that are like in neutral, you get your explosion. Well, the first time it manufactured that little chemical, here it goes again, blew itself up again. But it doesn't. Why? Well, because it has like an asbestos-lined firing chamber. And even then it would blow itself up if it didn't have somewhere for the explosion to go. So it has like twin tail tubes. And it can aim these tail tubes all the way up, out the side, out the front. Let's say a spider is coming up toward its side and it doesn't have time to turn around and shoot. It can just take its little gun turret, aim it out there and shoot. The explosion on this little bug, all you hear, if you're listening as a human, you hear this pop. But scientists have now put that explosion in slow motion. And it's like about 1,000 sequential little explosions, but they're so fast, all we hear is one pop. And so you think, well, now, why would that be? Well, that was a curious thing for the scientists that study this little bug. A lot of them at Cornell University, some other places. And what they discovered was that if it was just one big pop, the little bug, if he's shooting like a spider, let's say over here, and he goes, oh, bang, shoots it, he's going to pop himself right out of it. It's like lighting a burner on a jet engine. So he's out of it. But as long as it is a sequential explosion with his little legs, he can hang on. How would evolution explain a sequential explosion? This little bug messes with all the theories of evolution. There is no way a slow, gradual process is going to produce this bug. There's no way, even the newest theories of evolution, like punctuated equilibrium, which means evolution happens very fast. Well, there's no way that will explain this little bug. I began to realize, how could this particular little animal, for instance, evolve?
Punctuated equilibrium is what I call the hopeful monster theory. The idea would be that a reptile lays an egg and out comes a bird, basically. It is the hopeful monster which says since there's no transitional forms between fish, amphibian, reptiles, birds, and mammals, then that basically it was a very fast, crazy change, and you basically had fish lay an egg and out came a frog, kind of thing. It's called punctuated equilibrium in science, but it's really called the hopeful monster theory. It's the best they can do because they've never figured out transitional forms, because you should have gajillions of transitional forms between fish and amphibian, reptiles, birds, and mammals, and there are none. Absolutely not at all. And so, and you have a slew of scientists who have said that, by the way. Darwin was one of them, and he talked about how with all of the research that we've done in archaeology, we should have found the transitional forms, but we haven't done it. And so, it's just kind of an interesting thing.
It needed all of its parts. It needed everything there all at once, or you just don't have the animal. And my stomach started to churn, if I really want to be honest. And my wife would tell you, my stomach churned for 5 years. It took a 5-year struggle for me to begin to flip the way I think, from thinking in an evolutionary way to thinking in more this animal, or little creature, little bug, whatever, was created fully formed, just like it is. Because that went against everything I'd ever learned.
Exploration films. We're curious.
So, kind of cool. So there's our bombardier beetle. Now, there's another one that is some interesting warfare for beetles, like the bombardier beetle. And this is a water beetle. And so a water beetle is a unique little creature. Have you ever seen little bugs that can run on the water and things like that? By the way, you can get some other organisms that do that too. There's actually a little lizard that can run on the water, and it's a fun, you can watch that on YouTube sometime. But these bugs, they're able to basically, don't do it now. I can show you later if we have time, because I have it up already. And so, but they, these beetles, they are able to, with the way that their feet are designed, they don't break the surface tension of the water, and they're able to literally walk on the water. And so what's interesting about the water beetle, though, is that it has a nozzle similar to our bombardier beetle, only it's one chemical. It's not a complex chemical reaction. But the chemical that it shoots out is basically like detergent. And so what does detergent do? How does detergent work in your washing machine or dishwasher or whatever? Anybody know?
Breaks down particles.
It breaks down particles. It breaks down the surface tension of the water and other things so that the actual chemical agent can get to whatever the stain or whatever it is and be able to wash away past the oil. Because oil, for instance, if you had a cup of water here and you had pepper on top of it, this is always one of the little nerd science tricks you can do, and you can drip a drop of oil right in that, and it will move all of the pepper to the side. It's just kind of one of those little interesting things because it changes the surface tension of the water. And so what happens, this little water beetle then, he has a nozzle that when he's threatened, he will shoot out detergent into the water, which does two things. One, it propels him forward like a jet engine, because just like the bombardier beetle can blast 500 blasts per second of that chemical, and the way that it's done is so it's blasting like this so that he doesn't get thrown backward or thrown forward or wherever he's going. It's that burst so he can hang on. Well, the water beetle does have a burst, and it propels the water beetle out of danger. So if it has a frog trying to come up to it or something like that, it shoots the detergent out, it propels it forward, and the detergent breaks the water, the surface layer of the water. And so if it's another bug that's walking on water that's chasing after him, he'll sink. Again, it breaks the surface tension on the water, and so if it's being chased by another water bug, the detergent will break the surface tension, the other bug will not be able to walk on the water, it sinks, it will die, and that was how God designed it. And so again, we start to look at the complexity of nature and go, okay, so if it were an evolutionary model, this would have to evolve over time, slowly, on accident. And again, the question always is, for the evolutionists, prove to me how this would have evolved over time through random, mutational, accidental moments. The answer is there's absolutely no possible, no conceivable way. And so that's just one other example. Another one is migratory birds or migratory animals. Now I think this is an interesting one, but if you think about it, there are all kinds of migratory instincts in different organisms, but evolutionists have to be able to explain these complex processes. Now, I keep saying that today, and I'm saying it that way on purpose. So often, creationists or Christians have been on the defense. The evolutionists are the ones coming to us and saying, prove to me that there's a creator. Really, the argument for them is, you need to prove to me that this occurred through random, step-by-step, mutational effects over eons of time. They have no absolute way, in any way, shape, or form, to be able to even remotely do that. And so what you look at is the complexity of the mechanism and ask, what is it that we see here? Is this random? Is this accidental? Is this mutational? Or is it created this way in a complex system? And so I think migratory organisms are one of those that I think we would see that it would have to be 100% right or it wouldn't work at all. So here's an example. The lesser white-throated warbler is a particular bird. It summers in Germany, it winters in Africa, and as summer begins to draw to a close, the adult birds leave, and they fly away. Thousands of miles they fly away, and they leave the juvenile birds all by themselves. They're fully functional birds, but they've never made the journey. The parents do not take the baby birds with them. They leave, and they leave the baby birds there, and the parents fly off to Africa, and then a few weeks later, several weeks later, the juvenile birds will leave, and they will end up exactly where the parents ended up. Exactly where. Like, they'll meet up, and we tag them to test it. And we're talking about thousands of miles that they're flying from Germany to Africa. The parents leave weeks before the juveniles. The juveniles have never made the trip. So one way you would say, well, if the parents have babies and the babies grow and then the parents fly and the baby ones fly with them, then the older generation is always showing the new generation where to go. That doesn't happen. They leave weeks and weeks and weeks apart from one another. The adult birds, they take off and have vacation in Africa, leave the stupid kids at home, and then the stupid kids eventually figure out how to fly over there weeks and weeks later, thousands of miles from Germany to Africa, and meet up with the parents in the same exact location and same exact shore and area. Now, how in the world did that happen? Evolutionists have to explain that. They have no way to explain that. How an organism who has never made that journey can do it the first time, thousands of miles, have never seen it. Birds apparently don't tell the story. I mean, as far as we know, they don't talk to each other and go, hey, by the way, here's how you need to follow the flight path. Find the Pleiades and just follow that, this direction, you'll be in good shape. They don't do that. And so it has to be built into their very DNA how to do this. We don't know how they do it. There's absolutely no answer for how they have a perfect compass, a perfect time clock. They can figure out longitude and latitude and end up in exactly the same location thousands of miles away. How do they do that? Well, they were created to do that. It's the only answer that makes any sense. The evolutionary mechanism would say that even if there were 1% off, they would never be able to meet with each other. Does that make sense? Even 1% messes up the whole system. And so if it were evolution and mutation, they would have a whole lot of random messing it up until they figured it out. But this isn't a learned behavior because they're doing it for the first time and finding out where they need to go. There's no learning involved. It was built into them to do this. And we see this with other organisms, not just the white-throated warbler. We see other ones that do similar things, like the golden plover travels 8,000 miles from Hudson Bay to Nova Scotia and then on to Argentina and then back again. And they do this trip all the time. And again, how smart is a bird to fly 8,000 miles and do it perfectly every time and go from one shore to the next shore and back and forth again and always find their way? I couldn't do that if I had an electronic compass. I would still get lost. But yet they're able to do those things. Or barn swallows migrate 9,000 miles from northern Canada to Argentina. Or Arctic terns migrate 14,000 miles each year, traveling from pole to pole and back again. That's amazing that they travel that far. Now, the other side of that is, if an evolutionary mechanism were true, why would they leave? What would an evolutionary mechanism be? If you studied evolutionary biology, what would the evolutionary mechanism that should be in place for these birds instead of migrating 14,000 miles twice a year? What should the evolutionary mechanism be?
Their body temperature being able to adapt.
Adaptation or natural selection. It would say instead of the birds leaving a cold environment to go to a warm environment and then leaving that one and going back to the other environment, they should be able to adapt to the colder environment. And that certain ones that can adapt, they would be able to live. The weaker ones are going to die off. So the stronger ones, they procreate, they create babies that all have stronger, systems. They shouldn't have to migrate. Migration goes against the theories of natural selection. Natural selection should say they should have figured this out by now and they would have stayed instead of making a trip like that. Because from an evolutionary mechanism, what are you trying to do as an organism? Well, you're trying to pass on your genetics, you're trying to eat, have enough food so you can pass on your genetics. Flying 14,000 miles is a waste of energy and time to accomplish those tasks. It doesn't make sense from an evolutionary scale. It only makes sense that they were created that way where God made them for them to do this trip and to figure these things out. And again, they're not the only ones that do it. Whales do it, fur seals do it, certain bats do it, salmon does it, eels, lemmings, and other various animals all migrate. They were created to go on a journey a couple times a year and to travel some route that they have built into them where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to do it. And so again, Romans 1:20, I think is an important passage there. The invisible things of God are revealed by the things of His creation, so the man is without excuse if he rejects the truth. To me, I look at those things and say, there's absolutely no way that you could reject a creator in those things. The complexity shows enough. Now, there's other stuff we could talk about, like convergence. And I may have talked about this at some point on Monday night. Convergence is talking about how different organisms will evolve the same thing over time. And so, for instance, the idea of what organisms can fly. Can anyone tell me what organisms do you know? Just name the organisms that can fly or have flown in the past. Birds. So that was the easy one. Good.
Insects.
Insects. Good. What else? Can mammals fly?
No. Wait, what? Yeah, sure.
That's a trick question. Bats are mammals. They can fly. So now we have birds, insects, and mammals. Can reptiles fly? At least there's one, a dinosaur from the past that we know could fly, right?
Squirrel.
Huh?
A flying squirrel.
Well, they don't actually fly. They glide and fall. They fall with style. Archaeopteryx is an ancient reptile that would have flown. And we know because they had scales and hollow bones and wing structures like bats. It was a reptile. And so what convergence says then is you have the same mechanism, which is the ability to fly, which is a very complex mechanism that has now randomly, through mutations, evolved in totally different organisms. You've got mammals and reptiles and birds and insects who have all evolved this crazy complex mechanism, and they've all done it virtually at the same time in the history of organisms. The idea of convergence is ridiculousness when it comes to that idea. But let's talk about how bugs fly for a minute, because I think it'll blow your mind. It does blow mine anyway, because it's one of those things that we take for granted that we just don't think about, but we should. So here's our little insect friends. Get it up here. That's not going to go up any further.
In labs around the world, researchers are competing to develop tiny aircraft that carry tiny cameras and can sense their surroundings. Now, they make great kids' toys and, of course, give you excellent sports coverage. But the military are keen to develop them for covert surveillance. The trouble is, building these tiny aircraft requires a radical rethink of aerodynamics. And for that, the researchers are turning to the insect world for inspiration. Here's Mark Horstman.
History shows that for a human-powered machine to fly with flapping wings takes courage, clever invention, and a sheer disregard for safety. But to build a machine that can fly like an insect needs a complete rethink of aerodynamics. The wings of insects work in unique ways, unlike any other flying animal.
At one extreme, you've got things like houseflies, and they've got one pair of wings. It's rigidly attached to the side of the body, and they make it fly by a pair of muscles which pull from front to back, and the whole thorax just pings out, and that pinging mechanism makes the wings go down.
At the other end of the spectrum is the maneuverability and control of the damselflies and dragonflies.
Dragonflies use the big muscles that go from north to south to actually power the wings. They control each wing individually, they control each vein in each wing individually.
Now this may look a little like a dragonfly, and in fact it does have 4 wings, but that's where the similarity ends. In fact, the way it flies is unlike anything that you can find in nature.
There's nothing like this. Nothing like this in the insect world with wings one on top of the other like that. You never get that.
While building an exact copy of an insect may still be beyond us, we can use the best ideas their evolution has come up with.
The best ideas that evolution has come up with. They continually
What
talk about it
are
as
the
if
Boeing
it's a directional
747s of the
and
insect
purposeful.
world,
It's not. It's
able to fly efficiently for long distances for days at a time. We can read their flight secrets from the smoke patterns in this wind tunnel. They provide hard data to build a computer model, and that's the job of aeronautical engineer John Young.
And one of the great things about doing fluid dynamics, computational fluid dynamics, we can do things that we can't actually do in nature, so we can make some changes to the wings and see what effect they have.
The simulations aim to capture every detail, right down to the veins in the wings.
You can see all the wing folding and veins here, the sort of corrugations in the rear wing, and you can see some slight curvature in the forewing.
The colour coding shows air pressure, blue for low pressure to red for high pressure. Simplifying the complex wing into a flat plate shows a larger blue area, which means lower air pressure over the wing.
That generates a lot of lift, in fact more lift than the real insect, but the downside is it comes at about twice the power requirement. So the efficiency of the animal has gone down by about 50% or more when you have this flat plate model.
That's crucial information to know if you want to use the locust as a model for a micro flying machine.
We need to put all the details in. We need to put all these veins, all this folding, and we need to precisely control what the wing is doing.
The trick is in how the wing changes shape for micro-airborne vehicles, and that's got the military's attention.
Anything that's useful for search and rescue, anything that can fly into a building or peer through a window, will also be very, very useful for counterinsurgency, counter-terrorism work as well. These vehicles are being built, and particularly in the US with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, they're quite well advanced.
And this is it, a remote-controlled prototype that hovers with flapping wings and weighs less than 10 grams, just a bit more than a big dragonfly, while able to carry a tiny camera.
I would say these would be in field trials perhaps within 10 years. We'd look to build up a range of techniques, a bag of tricks if you like, that we can apply, and it could do something that any given single insect may not be able to do, but taken together, there's the potential to do better than nature.
There's a potential to do better than nature. Whatever. That is the hubris to the highest degree from that scientist. Anyway, so what's amazing about that is you see the complexity of the design. As they're looking at just a simple moth in a wind tunnel, and they're able to see the sculling of the wing tissue. Like if you're swimming, you know, if you're treading water, you're doing this in the water, right? That's sculling, where you're pushing the water and pulling the water in different places. The wings of an insect do the same thing, where they have this beautiful and perfect design to it. It's much more complex than how an airplane flies. You might think that we've created complex mechanisms like an insect, when we haven't. Would you agree that an insect on an evolutionary scale should be far less complex than, say, ourselves? So it should be, but yet it is far, far, far more, billions of times more complex than even what we've created for flight. Like an airplane, it flies by a principle called Bernoulli's principle, which is really just simply lift. It's like a piece of paper here, and you blow across the top of it, and yet the paper comes up into the space. I'm not doing that, I'm on top of it. That's called Bernoulli's principle. It's a principle of lift. It's how airplanes fly. It's the shape of the wing, and as you shape the wing a certain way, if the air moves over the wing at a different speed than underneath, because the wing there's more surface to it, and rounded, it actually creates an air pocket above, or a lower pressure zone above the wing, and that, just like the paper, will move up into that lower pressure zone when air moves across the top of it faster than it moves below it. This is how planes fly. So you have enough power, which is thrust, and Bernoulli's principle creates lift, and that's how airplanes fly. It's really a pretty simple technology. How a moth flies is a billion times more complex, with the way that the muscles work in the wings. And you get a simple honeybee, and they flap their wings 200 times per second. To think about the nerve tissue that would be necessary, again, you would think that an insect is far less complex, but if you think about the nerve tissue that is necessary on top of a paper-thin or thinner than paper wing that has veins in it, and attachment into the body of this organism, and it's able to rotate the wings, and many insects can fly backwards or fly to the side or up and down, and they can change complete direction at any given moment. This is absolutely a miracle creation. It's just all there is to it. And scientists would love to figure out how to do it. They keep trying. They're never going to completely figure it out, I don't think. But when you look at this complexity, it should blow your mind. At least it does for me. So even a simple moth shows the creator. It does. It just shows the complexity of design and the complexity of a brilliant creator who created things. Now, the last couple things I just want to say as we finish up here. There are 100 more things I could give you to talk about nature and the complexity of the creator and the design. One of those is visual beauty, which may seem strange to you, but some organisms aren't necessarily beautiful, and yet they still can function. They can eat and they can mate and do all those things, but there are certain organisms that are amazingly beautiful. Now, an evolutionist may say, well, they need those in order to attract a mate. But again, I would say that there's plenty of organisms that are ugly as sin, like they've been beat up with the ugly stick. There are lots of organisms like that, and they can still find wives and husbands. So that's okay. There's kind of somebody for everybody. It happens in the animal kingdom too. So it can't be proof that the beauty is in order to mate. It's just not true, because there's other organisms that don't have that benefit and they're able to find a mate. And so what explanation is there for beauty in the created order, in organisms like insects, to have multiple colors and rings and shapes and all that? Now, I will admit, some of the butterflies and things, they have big dark circles on their wings, if you've ever seen those, and they look like eyes. And when I was studying in evolutionary biology, they said, well, this is a sign of mimicry, where the organism is mimicking a larger organism, and it fakes out the predators because it says that it has eyes. Is that possible from the evolutionary model we've talked about? The answer is no. Mimicry, mimicking another organism, would be directional and purposeful. These butterflies do not have paintbrushes, and they're going home and going, hey, would you mind painting a couple eyes on my wings? That would be awesome, because I'd love to pretend like I'm a fox. No, it doesn't happen that way. Mimicry is ridiculousness when it comes to the idea that they needed to have eyes on their wings so that another organism wouldn't eat them because they think it's a fox. It has to be random mutational effect. And so when you see the beauty of nature and the beauty of organisms, it shows the Creator. Again, and other things. You look down and deep in the oceans, we found organisms down there that have the most brilliant colors and different designs that are built in, and they're in complete darkness. They can't even see, and yet they're designed with this complex color. So why would God do that? Well, the answer is He did it for His own glory, His own pleasure, and for us to enjoy. For us to look at a peacock and go, wow, that's amazing. Or for us to look at other organisms and their beauty and have in some way reflect the beauty of a Creator. That's the only reason that you would have it. In fact, most of the time, if you're lots of bright colors in the animal world, now if you find a brightly colored frog, that's a sign to leave it alone. If it's bright yellow or orange, do not touch. That is a warning sign if you find it. But in animals, and birds and things like that, that's not necessarily the case. The beautiful colors should harm it because it's now more obvious to be seen and more typical to be attacked. And yet here they are, and they're beautiful for us to enjoy. And I think that's the main answer, that we see that. There's other stuff I'd love to talk about, but what I wanted to do tonight is give you some examples, again, of this Creator that shows that He is creative and fun. I look at creation and I see humor in that. Like, we were watching videos last night of screaming goats. Now, I'm challenging you, you go watch YouTube and watch screaming goats later. It is the funniest thing ever, and you will cry in laughter. It's great that God created screaming goats for us to enjoy. That's what it does. It's wonderful. It's so enjoyable. There's no other purpose for it than God had a good time in His creation.
Try fainting goats.
Fainting goats?
Never seen fainting goats.
Oh yes. Maybe later we'll watch some of these fainting, screaming goat videos. So that's great. Anyway, so why? God created them to show His goodness, His glory, that He is, that we can enjoy what He created. He created it to give us a reflection of Him, of Himself, and the beauty that we find in Him. So, I hope you're amazed by that. I really do. Again, there's other stuff we could talk about. That's probably more stuff than you ever wanted to know about bugs. But I opted not to do all those on Sunday morning. But, you could spend 100 more hours talking about what the amazingness of what you see in creation. So hopefully you're convinced. Hopefully you see it and you go, there's no question there's a Creator. It's not accidental. It's not mutational. It was designed this way for a purpose and a plan. That's ultimately my goal, to show you the Creator in all that. So we're done for tonight. There's more I could talk about, but we're out of time, so I'm going to be done. So let me tell you a couple things because I just want to prepare you. First of all, please sign up for a blood drive. There's a sign-up sheet here. That's on Wednesday, if I remember correctly. So you can do that and look around. There's stuff about community groups. We'd love to have everybody get involved in one of those. If you want to take a flyer and put it up at your business place about the blood drive, we have some extra ones there also. The last thing I'm going to say is this is a moment of transparency for you to talk about Monday nights and kind of where we go from here. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out my schedule and how my schedule works. And the answer is I don't have enough hours in the day to do everything. And the problem with that then is that makes some hard decisions because everything I do like this I really enjoy and love. But certain times when there's 80 hours a week every week, something has to give. And this is going to be one of those. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, I think just even with the small crowd tonight, I think tonight's going to be our last night for Monday nights. And so, at least for a season. That's sad to me because I love nerding out and talking about science things and all that. But I need to do it because I need the 7 hours back that Monday is. And especially with going to the third service on Sunday. Energy-wise, it's very hard for me to function and get all that done. And so we're going to stop the Monday nights for now. Now, we may pick those back up at some point next year, but I think for now we're going to be done with those. Here's what we're going to do different, though, because the Monday night, when we changed it from our 242, I told you this was an experiment. If you were here, I said very clearly we're going to experiment with a different format, see how it goes. And I enjoy it. I really do. I love doing these things. I think it's fun. But what we're going to do instead, I think, for now, is 2 to 4 times a year, we're going to have a big apologetics event. Might be on a Friday night, for instance. It'd be about 3 hours, and it would, in essence, be a seminar. And I would talk on creation or talk philosophy or something that's apologetics-oriented. And we would publish these big time in the community and try and see if we can get people to come that are really skeptical. The every week thing is difficult to get traction with the outside world to get them in, just when you're doing from a marketing perspective. And so if we have a big event, we can bill it as a big fun thing, try and have 200 or 300 people come, and half of those, it'd be awesome if it were from the community, and get everybody in here. We'll bill it as an apologetics, although we won't use that term. It'll be defending the faith. Skeptics welcome, come figure this out. And I think that's what we're going to do. And that will allow me to focus my time a little more effectively for that and plan for that better. Okay? So I think that's what we're going to do. So Monday nights then, the women's Bible study would be at 6 o'clock still. We'll still do LMNO at 8:30. But I think tonight will be our last night for this for now. And I'll put that on social media. You're the first ones to hear it. And we're just going to say we're going to, for at least the rest of the year, we're going to not have Reveal or any Monday night teaching program. And that'll give me some time back to accomplish some of the other things that I need to get done and balance that life out. Does that make sense to everybody? I know it's disappointing to some of you. It's disappointing to me. It really is. But at some point you have to decide some things, you can't always do everything. And this is one of those moments for me that I have to give up something I love in order to accomplish things that need to be accomplished. Part of that is because we are not a small church anymore, and there's always a million more things to do, and I need to get some of those things done. I can't pull it off. So that's what we're going to do, at least for now. Okay? So we might bring it back next year and maybe change it up again, see how that looks, but that's what we're going to do from this point on for now. Okay? Any questions or thoughts for me on that? You're welcome to share a thought if you want to.
Take Monday night out on the screen and go.
Yeah, sounds good.
I have a question about the bug.
Okay.
Are we allowed to kill bugs?
Are we allowed to?
Because if they're in a house and let them out because God made them special?
I think you're going to have to make that decision, Dixie. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's so good.
You'll have to decide on whether or not it's good to kill bugs.
Oh wait, no, because you still don't eat them. So. Okay.
As long as you eat the bugs, you're fine. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. All right. Well, have a good night. If you can, if you're willing to, sign up for a blood drive. Other than that, I think I'll find a video of a screaming goat, and we'll go from there. Thanks for being here tonight, guys. Hey, be here. Hey.
something. No, I was like, is that merchant? I was like,
Tocar depois.
¿Qué opina usted del gobierno de Zapatero? ¿Y qué opina usted? ¿Qué opina usted? Y